Hello, this is the Catholic Faith Explained, and this is Lesson 5, Part 2, regarding God. In Part 1, we spoke about God's simplicity and oneness, and we also spoke of His infinite nature. We will continue with this discussion and go on to explain each attribute of God through the lens of His infinite nature. It is important to make the distinction between God, who is infinite, and everything that exists outside of God. God, as creator, created everything that exists outside of Himself. Before creation, God and God alone existed. This is incomprehensible to us as human beings. We cannot imagine this reality, that God and God alone existed and there was nothing else. No thing existed outside of Him. So to try and wrap our heads around this is an impossibility. Remember, He is infinite and we are finite. We are limited. Taking that all into consideration means we have to realize our limitation and accept it for what it is and not be upset that we are not God, because in the end that is what the devil tempted Adam and Eve with from the very beginning. So God was alone. It was God and God Himself, nothing else. Because everything that exists has its beginning in God's creative action and everything came into existence by His command and through His will, we call every created thing finite. That is, limited and having a beginning. So on the one hand, we have the infinite, limitless God who alone exists in and of Himself. God, being God, does not depend on the existence of any other thing. He has no beginning. He has no end. He always is. Because in God, and this is another incomprehensible mystery, because in God there is only the present. For us created finite creatures, there is past, present, and future. We are in the created universe, a triune universe, by the way. God created the universe in His image. Without the will of God sustaining all of creation, all created things would cease to exist. Let's go through that again. On the one hand, we have the infinite, limitless God who alone exists in and of Himself, not being dependent on any other thing. He and He alone is His own existence. And therefore everything that exists because He created it out of nothing remains in existence through His will. Think of that. In other words, God created everything that exists out of nothing. There was nothing. He did not use primordial matter to create the universe. It was not as if primordial matter existed alongside of the infinite God. It itself would then be God. Matter did not exist. Space did not exist. Time did not exist before God created it out of nothing. Ex nihilo, out of nothing. Without the will of God sustaining all creation, all created things would cease to exist. Simply stated, finite creatures depend on God for their existence. Everything that exists and is sustained in its existence by God. Now, God, when He created things, He created them to exist and to remain. So God doesn't create things to disintegrate or to go away, or He creates things in order for them to exist as they were existing in his mind before their existence. Does that make sense? I'd like to define a term that will be used throughout the exploration of the Catholic faith. The term is perfect or perfection. We hear it all the time, and many people have a misunderstanding of this word. They mistakenly believe that perfection can only be claimed by God and that only God is perfect. This is incorrect, and you will understand why when we define the term. Perfect is actually another word for complete. In other words, a thing that is perfect is complete in itself. All of its potential is actualized. A perfect thing is everything it should be, or its potential is actualized completely. God is by his very nature infinitely perfect. He is infinite perfection. In other words, there is nothing lacking or wanting in God. Every attribute of God is actualized infinitely. There is nothing that can be added to him, nothing that he lacks. There is no potential in God. For example, we can say that God is infinite joy, infinite holiness, infinite mercy, infinitely just. So God's joy is infinitely complete. Therefore, God cannot by his infinite nature acquire more holiness, more love, more mercy. If he lacked anything, if he had any potential, then he would not be God by the very definition of the term God. Finite creatures, on the other hand, can be perfect in themselves when all their potential is actualized within the nature of the actualization. So there was at the moment of creation a perfect oak tree, for instance, a perfect whale, a perfect elephant, a perfect dragon. Yes, even the perfect man and woman. Something as simple as a glass of water can be perfect insofar as its potential is actualized fully. Imagine a glass of water filled to the very brim so that not one more drop of water could be added to it without causing it to overflow. We can say that that glass of water is perfectly full. Perfectly full. It's complete. The glass, which is there in order to contain liquid, is perfectly full. It's completely full. So with humans, there is always greater potential for spiritual growth and knowledge, unlike God. There's no potential for God to grow in knowledge. He knows. He knows everything infinitely. See, and I'm trying to make this distinction because infinite is incomprehensible to us as human beings. We can understand the concept, we cannot comprehend the concept. To comprehend means to encircle the concept fully and to understand it perfectly, and we cannot do so with God because he is infinite and we are finite and therefore limited. We can say that at any one moment in any one thing, that person's knowledge is complete, or they are at this moment as perfectly holy as they can be at that time in their life. One of the great gifts of man, because he is finite, he is in a sense infinite in his potential to grow in perfection even in heaven. Because in heaven we will spend eternity experiencing and learning new things, both about God and about his creation. We will never stop in heaven learning and understanding more. We will spend an eternity, and that knowledge will always be joyous, wonderful, amazing. Each layer of the onion being stripped away slowly throughout eternity as we come to understand more and more and more about God and his creation. That's the beauty of being finite, is that there's infinite potential to grow infinitely. What is the meaning of holiness, or to be holy? Holiness means separation from evil. Because God is infinitely holy, there is no evil in him. There cannot be. It is a contradiction to his nature. Evil can be defined as a lack of good or a deficiency in the nature of a thing. But God is infinitely good and has no lack of anything. There is no potential in God to become better than he already is. He is infinitely perfect. He is complete. In his goodness, he is complete. In his holiness, he is complete. So whenever we say a finite creature is holy, it is because they are in some way or another participating in the holiness of God himself. In fact, that is true with everything that we do that is good. In every act that we do, in every way that we are just, that we are merciful, that we are holy, that we are good, that we are virtuous. All of these things participate in the infinite virtue of God, in the infinite goodness of God, in the infinite justice of God, in the infinite mercy of God. Our infinite, perfect, all holy God is almighty. This is another attribute of God. He is almighty. Nothing is impossible for him. Think of all that exists in our universe. Every star, every planet, every grain of sand, every atom, every creature, and it exists only by the all-powerful hand of God. He is what we call omnipotent, all-powerful. His power is infinite. It has no limits. Now, it must be noted that people will posit nonsense like, well, if God is all-powerful, can he make a square circle or create something so large that even he could not lift it? The idea that contradictions are logical impossibilities does not limit God. God is, after all, infinite logic, order, infinite harmony. It is impossible for him to contradict himself. To say, can he make a stone larger than he himself could not lift, is nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. God can't contradict himself. That is why we call him Almighty. He has infinite power, power without limit, power to create an entire universe out of nothing, power without effort. It's not as if he's working when he does something. It is creation simply with a thought. He thought everything that exists into being in an instant. That's the end of lesson 5, part 2. I hope it gives you some understanding, and we will continue on with the lessons in terms of God and his creation. God bless you, and may he inspire you with the knowledge of the Catholic faith.